This is draft season presented by Moody's from the Hackensack Myrna Hill podcast studio. Keep getting better. I am John Schmelk, battling a cold courtesy of my 3-year-old and 8-year-old. So I pardon the voice. I got to make sure I'm good to go for Indy next week when I will not stop talking for like 5 straight days. So we need to make sure we get that squared away. As always, Tony Pauline from Essentially Sports. Tony, what's going on, man? How are you?
Oh, not much. Like you getting ready for the combine. It should be an interesting one with so many questions in this draft. Excited, stressed, and looking forward to it.
Yeah, absolutely right. I'm excited as well, Tony. And this is going to be our combine preview. Keep in mind, we are recording this the Thursday previous. So if guys release at some point over the next 3 or 4 days that they're not working out, that's not going to be here. So just something to keep in mind, Tony. And things do change. And a lot of times we get surprises when we're out there at the combine about certain guys that might not work out.
Yeah, I mean, there's some big names and some questionable names, some guys that have to work out. I mean, we'll start off the bat with a guy like Ty Simpson, who didn't participate in the Senior Bowl because of the injury he suffered during the college football playoff game. You know, there's a guy like that work out, and right off the top, the number one pick of the draft, Francisco Mendoza, has announced that he is not going to participate in the combine, which is not a surprise. He really doesn't need to.
Yeah, and Tony, I guess that's the place to start, right? Why don't we start with the quarterbacks? And to me, this could be a situation where Ty Simpson could really help himself, right? Yeah. Where Mendoza's not going, Simpson ended the season poorly. Can he show off some high-level traits that can intrigue some NFL teams here that might push him into the back half of that first round?
Well, I mean, I think personally, the combine is set up for Ty Simpson. He's got a decent arm. He can make a lot of NFL passes. If you watch Ty Simpson, as we talked about in the closing weeks of the college football season, he struggles against the rush. When I did my film work on him, I was very concerned the fact that he's very late moving his head off the primary target. He stares down that primary target, which you're not going to see at the combine because, he's throwing to one guy with no defensive backs. So it's built perfectly for him. Will he choose to throw at the combine? I think he should, especially after not participating in the Senior Bowl. Getting back to Mendoza, I wrote it during Shrine Bowl, Senior Bowl week. I wrote that people were telling me Mendoza really shouldn't do anything before the draft process because he's going to be the number one pick. They said, go to Vegas, meet with the Raiders, take your medical, and that's it. Now, Mendoza has said he's going to throw in his pro day workout for his receivers because he's got Surratt, Omar Cooper, Riley Noah Kelsey. He's got the 2 running backs. So good on him. Not a surprise that Mendoza isn't going to participate in the combine. We've seen year in and year out top quarterbacks who, just don't throw at the combine. Caleb Williams, Jin Daniels, Cam Ward, Drake May, none of them threw at the combine. I mean, Bo Nix did and didn't do too well, although he still drafted high. Michael Penix threw well at the combine. I think it is important for Ty Simpson. I think it's set up for him to do well. We'll see what happens.
Yeah, I don't think the combine is that important for quarterbacks in terms of how they throw, to be honest with you. You have tape on them, you have the Senior Bowl, you have pro days. So, I mean, quarterback's a film position. What do they like a game? So I'm with you, Tony. So
let me just interject. I agree with you, but it can also help a quarterback because what Mendoza said, he told the truth. I mean, he's like, listen, why do I want to get out there and throw to receivers that I've never thrown to before?
Right.
And with a lot of these guys, we saw with Penix. That's what helped Penix so much. They get out there. They've never stepped foot on Lucas Oil Stadium. They're throwing to receivers that they basically met 48 hours ago. If you watch the quarterbacks throw on Sunday, if you watch Saturday, if you look really closely, because I'm in the stadium, the quarterbacks who are throwing on Sunday will actually come out on the field on Saturday, start throwing the football just to get acclimated to the situation. I think it's not a big factor, but if a quarterback has a real good throwing workout at the combine, it's another check in the positive in the pros box, and it relieves the pressure on what he's going to have to do during pro day.
Yeah, Tony, look, there is a battle for quarterback 3, right, in this draft class. After Simpson and after Mendoza, who are the guys from that group, whether it's a Nussmeier or Carson Beck, go through the list that you think really might be able to help themselves if they throw well here?
Nussmeier, you want to see if he's got a deep arm. You want to see if those long passes are getting downfield. The deep out is the money throw for the combine, where they go 35, 40 yards down the field, and you got to hit the receiver in stride, in time, and be accurate. Can Nussmeier drive those deep outs? The passes hanging in the air, or are they getting downfield with speed? With Carson Beck, how accurate is he? Is he all over the place with throws? Or is he basically, hitting the receivers in stride? Because Carson Beck, he can be streaky with his accuracy. Sometimes he's right on the money, makes perfect passes. Other times he's got open receivers, leaving their feet and stretching backwards and adjusting for the throws. Cole Payton wants to keep the momentum going that he built up at the Senior Bowl. He had a terrific Senior Bowl, 3 days of practice. He's got a big time arm. He wants to keep that momentum going. Taylon Green, a day 3 pick, he's got to show some accuracy. He's got the great physical skills, but his passes can be all over the place.
I want to see him run, Tony. I want to see how fast he runs too.
Yeah, I mean, and he probably will, because he's going to lay down a good mark. I mean, Drew Allar, where is Drew Allar in this process? I mean, like Ty Simpson, the combine should be set up for Drew Allar to do very well. But the problems with Drew Allar happen when there's 11 guys on the other side of the line of scrimmage, and he's got to make decisions. Cade Klubnik of Clemson, he's like Nussmeier. He's got to show some arm strength. If those deep passes are floating, or the receivers are slowing up, waiting for the ball to get to him, which I'm afraid is going to happen, that's going to be a big red flag.
All right, let's jump over to the running back position here, Tony. And this is not a great running back class. Jeremiah Love, I would be shocked if he did any of the stuff at the combine this year. We'll see. Who from that next group do you think can really help themselves?
Want to see what Kaytron Allen runs, if he runs. Kaytron Allen is known as a big, strong power runner, but we saw some quickness this year. Yeah. We saw some burst. We saw the ability to beat defenders into the open field. 215 pounds. Can he get under 4.5? I mean, because what that does is that kind of completes the equation. You thought he was just an interior grinder, and Nick Singleton was more the speed, explosive back, which he showed at the Senior Bowl after a poor senior season. Let's see how fast Kaytron Allen runs. Your guy, Damon Claiborne, he's a fast guy. Yeah. I mean, he is a speedy guy. I expect him to, lay down a really good time. The other thing with Allen is, let's see if he runs the shuttles in the 3-cone, what his times are. Because, again, people kind of project him as a straight-ahead downhill ball carrier. He's also got some lateral shiftiness, some lateral quickness. Damon Claiborne, your guy, really explosive and fast. Jonah Coleman from Washington. Yep. I mean, he's a shorter, wider back. He's got some good short area quickness. What's his long speed like? What's his 10-yard split like? What is his, he's not a truly creative back, but if he runs a good shuttle time going back and forth, that'll be interesting. The other kid from Arkansas, Mike Washington, who really, ripped up the Senior Bowl. And you watch him on film, he looks like he's got decent speed. He's projected as a 4.6 guy from scouts coming into the season. So Mike Washington, if he lays down a good time, you look what he did in 2025. The tape is really good as a pass catching ball carrier. And you spoke about how he really ripped up the Senior Bowl for 3 days. If he puts those athletic numbers together, it kind of completes the package.
Yeah, I want to see what Jonah Coleman runs in the 40, Tony. I think his shuttle times will be good. He's kind of low to the ground. I feel like his change of direction is strong. But I'm curious what his long speed is going to be when we see him run that. And I'm with you. Good call on Mike Washington. I'm with you. I want to see how fast he is as well. And Claiborne might be the fastest running back there in terms of overall speed. He might take that title in terms of running back that has the best 40 time.
I'm going to go with Desmond Reed of Pittsburgh. We'll see who's right. I'm going to go with Desmond Reed of Pittsburgh, who is an explosive back. He's a smaller guy. I'm surprised he got a combine invite. He's only played 12 games the past 2 years. But I think Reed is a guy that can maybe lay down something in the high 4.3s.
All right, let's check that out. Look forward to seeing it. All right, let's go to wide receiver, Tony. There's so many guys here at wide receiver we could talk about. This will probably be a longer conversation. Just in terms of potential first-rounders that I want to see, what does Denzel Boston run? Is he a 4.45 guy? Is he a 4.55 guy? Is he somewhere in between? Because he's a guy that is big. He's got good hands. I actually think he's pretty quick and twitchy side to side, but I don't know what his top speed is. Like, if he pulls in something in the mid 4.4s with his size and other abilities, that I think could almost assure him a first-round selection.
I think the big question is, which of the top receivers are going to run? Is Carnell Tate going to run? Probably not. Ohio State guys usually wait till their pro day. Jordan Tyson, you like to see him run.
Yep.
If he doesn't run, maybe he's hiding something. Maybe he's concerned. Remember, Ted McMillan a year ago ran just for a small group of scouts. Chris Brazel, I've talked about before. I think he's going to run. I'm told he's going to light it on fire. You're going to see times in the 4.3s. You're going to see a vertical jump over 40 yards. I agree with you about Denzel
40
Boston.
inches. 40 inches.
40 inches. What did I say?
40 yards.
Okay.
That'd be pretty good.
There you go. That would be. They'd have to remove the roof from Lucas Oil Stadium, right? Elijah Surratt of Indiana. If Elijah Surratt goes to the combine, decides to run, and he runs under 4.5, and he runs some decent shuttle times, all of a sudden that changes the conversation of Elijah
Tony, you're
Surratt.
right. Surratt's one of the guys on my list because you watch him and you wonder how much juice he has. If he times well, he could get into the second round if he times well.
Malachi Fields,
another guy on my list. Yep, another guy on my list.
I'm told that he's going to run faster than expected. What does that mean? Most people expect a time in the 4.5s. He's probably going to be in the mid 4.4s. Okay. And again, something like that. You have to remember that the combine is about expectations.
He told me, by the way, at the Senior Bowl that he thought he would be in the mid 4.4s. That's what he told me at the Senior Bowl.
Okay, so there we go. The combine is about expectations more than anything else.
Right.
If you are a guy that's expected to run in the 4.4s and you run in the 4.5s, that's a problem. If you are someone like Malachi Fields, who's expected to run a 4.52, a 4.53, and you run a 4.43, all of a sudden they're like, wow. And people will say, rightfully so, well, he didn't show that speed on the field. But what coaches and scouts are looking at is, well, we'll teach him to play to a 4.42. We know he can do that. We will be able to teach him and get him to play to that speed. I mean, later on, one of our favorite guys from the Shrine Bowl, Caden Wetchen, let's see what he runs. I'm sure he's going to be in the 4.3s. He is just so explosive. Ted Hurst, Georgia State, another guy who's like that. Elijah Surratt, expected to run in the 4.5s. If he runs a little bit faster, that changes the conversation. Got to say, I'm really shocked. I'm really disappointed that Lewis Bond of Boston College did not get an invitation. I think it's absurd. 88 catches last year, came into the season with fifth-round grades, legitimate next-level pass catcher, number 4, number 5 on Sunday. The fact that he did not get an invitation to the combine is really annoying to me.
Yeah, Tony, you're right. Look, what the combine's all about here is whether or not what you do at the combine matches what you show on tape, right? It's when you start seeing outliers, guys that they look fast on tape, but he runs a 4.6, and you're like, huh? Yeah. Or a guy that looks slow on tape, he runs a 4.42, and you're like, oh. So that's what the combine's about here. Can you confirm what you already think about these players based on their athletic testing? And by the way, teams have GPS data too, right? So they can compare the GPS data to the testing time, to the scouts' take on the film, and then they put all that together to figure out a complete picture.
Absolutely. I mean, later on, Reggie Virgil of Texas Tech, a taller, slim receiver, see how fast he is. Chase Roberts, the big possession receiver that we saw at the Shrine Bowl. Eric McAllister, favorite of mine from TCU. Tall, sure-handed possession, very productive receiver. We'll see how he does. J. Michael Sturdivant, who we spoke with at the combine, bigger, reliable, considered a high 4.4 guy. Let's see how he does. And like you said, like we both said, if these guys run faster than they're expected to, scouts know they have the speed. It's just a matter of coaching that speed out of them on the field.
Draft season is presented by Moody's, a proud partner of the New York Giants. Decode risk, unlock opportunity. Learn more at Moody's.com. All right, Tony, let's go to the tight end position here. And it's a position that, has some juice to it. My guess is that Kenyon Sadiq will participate just because I think he's going to test really well.
Yep.
And he'll show off. And I think the tight end position has really become a testing position, right? Because teams believe they can get a big athlete and turn them into a really good football player. So if Sadiq can put a time down in the high 4.4s and jump and be explosive and all that stuff, that could really help his draft standing as teams really value traits, I think, at that position.
Or it could hurt it if he doesn't meet those numbers because, he looks like a good athlete on the field. He looks like a sensational athlete on the field who's learning to become a football player. So, if he doesn't run, if he doesn't participate in the testing, that means there's a problem. But if he does, to your point, he's basically showing off because everybody expects him to be, a real good athlete and a real good tester. I agree with you. I mean, you look at the next list of guys: Eli Stowers, Max Clare, Jack Andrews, Tanner Cozio. I mean, this is your next group of tight ends, and it could be separated from one guy running a 4.65 compared to another guy running a 4.55. I
Yep.
mean, remember Evan Engram? Why did he jump as high as he did into the draft? Because he ran 4.43 at the combine. And you have a 240, 245 pound athlete that can run that fast. I'm going to be interested to see how Eli Rarigan does, because we
Yeah.
both like him. He's not a super fast tight end. Can he get under 4.7? Can he get in the 4.6 range? That would be key for him. Same thing with Lake McCree, who we saw at the Shrine Bowl. Lake McCree is a guy who, even if he runs in the 4.7s, it's going to hurt his draft stock. But he plays fast. He plays very quick. He shows the ability to get down the field. But if the stopwatch and the electronic timing reads in the 4.7s, it's going to hurt his draft stock. Riley Nowakowski of Indiana, a guy there's really no testing numbers on him because he wasn't graded before the season. And because he played so well in 2025, he's now at the combine. They can get full information on him. Khalil Dinkins of Penn State's another interesting one. I was kind of surprised he got an invite, had 16 receptions last season, but he's a bigger athletic guy. So he's someone who really needs to lay down some good marks because he wasn't really a very productive tight end at Penn State.
No, absolutely, Tony. And then when we go to the offensive line here, um, and by the way, let me put on the tight ends real quick. Stowers has to test well, right?
Yeah.
Because he's not a blocker, he's a receiver. So he better run well and he better show some athleticism in the explosive testing because that's where he's going to make his money. So someone that really I think has to do well if he wants to, try to push himself up into that second round area.
Those move tight ends, the
Yep.
guys that you put in motion before the snap, the guys you line up in the slot, the Max Clare types. Yeah, they've got to run relatively well. They got to show that they're good athletes because you're not putting them on the field to be blockers.
Yeah. All right. Let's go to the offensive line position here, Tony. And I'm not sure the testing numbers for these guys are necessarily super important, but I do think seeing how they move on the field is, you know what I mean? Because these are guys that have to block, especially the tackles specifically. Some of the best athletes in the world, all these edge players and defensive ends, and they have to be fluid. They have to have good balance. They have to be able to slide. So I think watching those, I always like watching the offensive linemen do their drills because you can see which guys are tight, which guys are loose, which guys are athletic, have good feet. So to me, the drills for the offensive linemen, to me, are almost more important than the testing numbers.
Well, it starts even before the drills. It starts with the measurements,
Yeah.
the heights, the arm length. I mean, how many times have we seen guys in the past? They don't have 33-inch arm lengths. They were good left tackles in college. You're going to be moved inside the guard because the teams want at least 33-inch arm length. So it starts with, and we've had this conversation: is Spencer Fano a guard or a tackle? Is Francis Mauigoa a guard or a tackle? People, rightfully or wrongfully, will come to that determination even before they take the field at Lucas Oil Stadium for their position drills and testing, but based on the measurements. So the measurements, and most of these guys at the top, Marioga, Fano, Proctor, Ione, are underclassmen, which means teams don't have measurements on these guys because they didn't participate in junior timing day prior to their senior season. So the measurements for these guys, Caleb Lemo, another guy, I would agree with you about the movement skills as opposed to the testing. Armand Membo last year just
Yep.
looked phenomenal on the field, phenomenal. And I came away just blown away. I said, this guy's a top 8 pick. He went 7th to the New York Jets. I would expect Fano to be a fluid mover out there. Same thing with Caleb Lemo. Max Iannacore of Arizona State, one of my favorites. Let's see if he can keep the momentum going. Terrific senior year, outstanding Senior Bowl. He looks athletic on the field. Let's see how he is during drills. Monroe Freeling of Georgia, again, he's a good mover. He looks smooth. What I'm going to watch with Freeling is, does he continually keep his knees bent? Sometimes he gets a little bit tall. That's something else you want to watch with the offensive linemen when they're doing their drills. Are they upright or are they staying low with their hands? As Bill Parcells used to say, bend your knees and get your hands up. Are the offensive linemen doing that? Later on, again, two Notre Dame guys. One guy that we saw at the Shrine Bowl, Emil Wagner. He looks very athletic. He looks smooth. He played both left and right tackle. See how he does during combine. And Billy Schrauth. I've talked about Emmanuel Pregnon of Oregon before. I also love Schrauth of Notre Dame. I think he's a different type of blocker. He's more of a power guy, not as effective in motion. But still, if he shows good footwork, when they do that side-to-side drill where you got to follow the coach, are you able to quickly change direction and keep your feet moving, as well as that drill where they're pulling out as they would be a pulling lineman? You want to see if those guys are smooth and fluid, as you mentioned.
And Kanan Proctor, for that matter, Tony, and how he moves his feet and how agile he looks at his size and what he weighs in at, I think will be significant too, right?
And the height as well. The height. There's some. He's expected to be about 6'7", but you're right about the movement skills. I mean, there's some people who feel that he doesn't move well enough to be a tackle. I disagree. I think he's a right tackle, and the arm length as well.
Yeah, and the other thing too, Tony, can we not have like the drama of the different arm lengths from the Senior Bowl like we had last year?
Last year, yeah,
that
year
was a mess,
and it's something to track because and for what people for people who don't know, what was happening was, and Will Campbell was a perfect example. Arm lengths at the combine were regularly anywhere from a quarter of an inch to a half inch shorter,
sometimes more than that.
Than what the measurements were at Shrine Bowl, Senior Bowl, and even Pro Day. And I had mentioned that. I tweeted that out before the LSU Pro Day because if you remember, I think Will Campbell's arm length was like 32 and a half during the Senior Bowl, during Combine. Everybody flipped out. And then at Pro Day, it was just over 33 inches. So you bring up a good point, and it's something that you could track actually right away from the first arm measurements that come out.
Yeah, because we have the measurements from the Senior Bowl, so we know what these guys have been, and the Shrine Bowl, what these guys have been measured at before. Looking for more than just a ticket? Elevate Experiences delivers VIP access to the world's biggest events, from the Super Bowl to NASCAR to PGA tournaments. Don't just attend. Elevate the experience at elevateexperiences.com. All right, Tony, let's go to the defensive side of the ball. Let's start with the defensive line, the big guys in the middle. Caleb Banks and Peter Woods are two guys that I would highlight here, Tony, because both guys, in Banks' situation, injury, in Woods' situation, inconsistency. Both these guys, if they're going to win consistently, they're going to rely on their athleticism. I think both guys are going to have to test very well this week to try to secure their first round or wherever they will wind up in the first round status.
Especially Woods, because like many of the players at Clemson, he failed to meet expectations on the field. So he better meet expectations during his combine testing, assuming he tests. And, like Kenyon Sadiq, this is set up perfectly for Peter Woods to go out there, lay some good times. We talk about the 40 times, but for defensive linemen, the 10 split is also very important. You want to see a quick 10 split. You don't want to see a 10 split in the 1/8, gosh forbid, the 1/9s. You want to see a quicker 10 split. So even if a Peter Woods runs a 5.10, but he's got a quick 10 split, and he's shown well compared to the defensive tackles as far as defensive linemen with the broad jump and the vertical jump. That tells you he's got some explosion in his lower body. Caleb.
And by the way, also the 3-cone, Tony, for the for the defensive lineman, because that shows kind of that side to side twitchiness.
Especially the ones you expect to be athletic, like Peter Woods. Banks, you bring up a good point. We will sit here and talk about the 40s and the verticals and the movement skills. Medicals are the most important thing at the combine. I can go story after story that I've broken over the past 25 years where guys came up with major medical red flags. One guy was forced to retire on the spot. So point being is that if something bad pops up in a combine medical for Caleb Banks, he can go out there and run a 4.7. Doesn't matter. He's going to get flagged. Gosh forbid he could fail. I'm just saying that as an example. I don't have any knowledge of that, but the medicals are very important for him and Akeem Mesidor, any guy with a past medical history. The medicals are important. One guy who I think can test really well, and I think should test really well, is Dennis Sutton. He's a 270-pound guy. They expect him to run in the low 4.7s. I mean, he plays like he should be able to run in the 4.6s with a good 10 time, have a good vertical jump. So he's one of those more athletic guys. Max Llewellyn of Iowa just looks like an explosive athlete. He showed it at the Senior Bowl. Didn't have great production at Iowa, but when you see him on film, you see the explosion, you see the quickness. When I saw him on film, when I saw him in person at the Senior Bowl, was very impressed with the athleticism and the movement skills he showed. So he's a guy that's got to test well. And then, you get your bigger guys, the Tim Keenans, the Dom Oranges of the world. I mean, they're more
Darrell Jackson, Lee Hunter, Christian
exactly.
Miller, all those big nose tackles there. It doesn't look pretty when they're running that 40-yard dash and stuff's jiggling and wiggling all over the place.
I think Lee Hunter's actually going to test pretty well. He's going to test better than people expect. He's not going to go out there and lay a 4.25. I think he could get into 5.1 because he looks very athletic in a short area. But yeah, I mean, those guys, you just don't want to see them. You don't want to see body parts moving around. Let's put it like that. DeMonte Capehart, another guy from Clemson. I mean, you're not looking for them to make. You would like to see them make athletic plays, but they're more your gap occupiers, your powerful guys. That are basically sticking them in the middle of the line to occupy blockers.
All right, let's go to the edge group here, Tony, and I'll lead off with two of the bigger edge rushers. You already mentioned Akeem Mesidor because I think how he tests will be important. He's 280 pounds, right? And then Ruben Bain's a bigger guy. Keldrick Faulk's a bigger guy. And these are not your bendy type of edge rushers. This whole class has a bigger group. So I don't think we're going to see as great of testing marks from this edge group necessarily as ones in the past because they just weigh more and they're bigger. But I think how Bain and Faulk and what kind of explosion and bend they show in the drills will go a long way to showing how high they might go in this top 15, top 10, top 20.
Cassius Howell of Texas A&M is another guy. We talk about guys with short arms. I mean, he's expected to have arms that could be under 32 inches. I'm not a big fan. When it comes to defensive linemen, I could take it or leave it as opposed to, say, an offensive lineman. Interested to see Gabe Jackas of Illinois because he's used both out of a three-point stance as well as standing.
I like him, man. He's a good player, Tony.
And you can use him in a variety of schemes. Yeah. I mean, you could use him as a 3-4 stand-up outside linebacker that puts his hand in the ground on occasion. I want to see what Derek Moore of Michigan tests. I think if he tests, he's going to be in the 4.6s. He's a very explosive guy. I believe a incredibly underrated edge rusher, if you will, defensive lineman. David Bailey is David. I think with David Bailey, we want to see what his height and his weight is, because people are concerned about that. Let's see what it is. Although he was, I'm looking at it here, 6'3", 246 last year at junior timing day. Let's see if it's at 6'3", 246. Or what the height means. When you're looking at a height, you're also looking at growth potential, because philosophically or fundamentally, a guy that's 6'3" and a half should be able to get a lot bigger than a guy that's 6'2" and a half, should be able to carry more weight. So a guy like David Bailey, you want to see what the actual height is, and that's why that matters. People say, well, an inch doesn't matter. Yes and no. Teams will look at it and say, you know what, this guy can comfortably be 255 pounds, 2 or 3 years down the road before he gets to a second contract, where this guy may struggle carrying that amount of weight.
I can see Romello Height, Tony, having a really big day and a big couple of days there. He's very fast. He's only 235 pounds. What he weighs in at, by the way, will be important. Does he get to 240? We'll have to wait and see, because I think that is a concern for people. But I think he could really help himself there.
It's kind of one makes the other one important. If he's lighter, he better run faster. Right. If he's 245, you can deal with him running in the low 4.7s. If he's 235 and he can't get on the 4.7, teams will look at that differently.
No, absolutely right. 100%, Tony. I'm with you on that. The Draft Season podcast is brought to you by Moody's, a proud partner of the New York Giants, uniting the brightest minds to turn today's risk into tomorrow's opportunities. Learn more at Moody's.com. All right, Tony, let's go to the off-ball linebackers here. And much like safety, this to me is not a testing position. Would you love to have a great 40 time and side-to-side speed? That's great. To me, linebackers a lot more about instincts and how you play with, to your point earlier, 11 other guys on the field that you're going against and 10 other guys on your side of the ball playing defense. But who are some of the linebackers that you're excited to keep an eye on to see how they test? I expect Sonny Styles to test extremely well.
If he tests, and you would think so. And I agree with you. It's more about being able to read and diagnose quickly. but you also want to, and a lot of linebackers we've seen make plays based off of their instincts rather than your physical skills. But if you can get both, and a guy like Sonny Styles, CJ Allen looks incredibly athletic on film. Is he going to test? What is he going to do there? Deontay Lawson, another favorite of mine. Jake Galladay of Cincinnati, favorite of a lot of people. I know he had a shoulder injury, which is what kept him out of the Shrine Bowl. Don't know that he's 100% healthy. If he tests, what is his 40 time? He's one of those guys that he basically makes plays with what's going on between his ears, but you still want to see those physical skills because that will determine how early he goes in the draft. Harold Perkins, I mean, we saw how big he was at the Shrine Bowl. Is he going to run in the low 4.4s? I mean, if he does, people are going to be blown away. I don't know that that's going to change the needle as far as teams are concerned. Our guy, Kyle Lewis at Pittsburgh. I mean, a smaller guy, but he is explosive. He is fast. He makes plays both with his instincts and his athleticism. Very excited to see him. Caleb Elamzor. I think that when you look at this linebacker class, we've said all along, literally since back in August and September, what a terrific off-ball linebacker group it is. And you want off-ball linebackers to be athletic. So you want to see good speeds from guys like Caleb Elam Ord, Wade Wood-Daz. I mean, Justin Jefferson of Alabama, who looks insanely athletic on the field. You want to see these guys put down good times, because off-ball linebackers are doing more than just rushing up the field. They're going sideline to sideline. They're going in reverse, and you have to have a good degree of athleticism to be able to do that.
Yeah, Donnie, some of these guys that are primarily run stoppers on day 2 that we saw play well, and I think they're good players. I think how they test could determine, all right, do we trust them in coverage? Guys like Keyshawn Elliott, Josiah Trotter, Jacob Rodriguez. What do these guys look like, not just with the testing, but in the drills, moving side to side, changing direction, range, coverage. These are guys in a very crowded class that could get pushed up a round or two or down a round or two, depending on how they test.
What is Eric Gentry's vertical jump? I mean, he looks like a guy that's, can dunk a basketball after doing a 360. Is he going to get close to 38 inches? Is he going to get close to 40 inches? He just looks like that type of athlete.
All right, Tony, let's go to the cornerback position now, and this is a testing position. Yeah. Teams care about this, and obviously Mansour Delane is going to be number 1 here for me. What does he measure lengthwise? What does he run? Does he get into the mid to low 4.4s when he runs? Yeah. And then does Jamal McCoy do anything, right? He's more than a year off his ACL injury. I think teams will be legitimately nervous if they don't get any testing numbers on him during the offseason process and pre-draft process. I can't imagine they won't. But what he shows in terms of whether or not his athleticism is completely back, I think will be very important for him.
As well as the medicals. Now go back to the medicals. When they basically go through his injury, X-rays, MRIs, sometimes they will pull on joints, to see how secure they are, the integrity of those joints. First with McCoy, it's going to be the medicals, then the testing if he tests at all. Agree with you about Delane. I think he just has to run under the 4.5. If he runs under 4.5, he's fine. D'Angelo Pons, what are his actual measurements? How tall is he? What is his arm length like? I have a feeling Brandon Siss, from what I've been told, is going to test off the charts. He's a tremendous athlete that's learning to become a football player. You go down the line.
And Tony, by the way, I think that group of like Cisse's, it says Cisse, Hood, Avion Terrell, I'll throw Chris Johnson in there I think he needs to test well from San Diego State. Those guys to me are kind of in a big cluster, right? Back into the first round, top of the second round. How do those guys kind of sort out each other during this process?
Not in that group would be Malik Muhammad, because I was being Senior Bowl, Malik Muhammad's a 4.6 guy. So if Malik Muhammad runs at the combine, it means he's confident that he's going to run faster than expected. If he doesn't run, that could be a major red flag. You're going to have to chart it through the pro day, assuming he runs. But the word about Malik Muhammad is he's not going to run good in the 40. Keontae Scott, he's a safety cornerback who even if he runs in the 4.5s, he plays exceptionally fast. And you because of his instincts, because of his football speed. So that's something that has to be taken into consideration. Avery Smith, who we saw at the Shrine Bowl, smaller cornerback, dime back at the next level, yet he's very quick. We talk about the 40 times. I would agree with you. It's testing. but there's a lot of drills that they do that you have to keep an eye on. I mean, they do that drill where they backpedal for 10 yards, turn their hips
Yeah,
and move
flip the
forward.
hips. You got to flip those hips.
And they do it both ways. They do it once to the right. They do it once to the right. In fact, there's a scout there timing them. You want to see that back because that's what they got to do on Sunday. We talk about straight line speed for cornerbacks. A lot of times they're moving in reverse. So you want to see a guy like Avery Smith from Toledo. He's phenomenal. I went up and complimented him after his first Shrine Bowl practice because I thought he was so terrific in drills. So that's something else to keep an eye on during the combine workouts.
And then finally, safety, Tony. Again, not a testing position to me. We've seen guys not test well safety and be great players. So I don't really get that concerned with their 40 times and stuff like that. But I want to see how Dylan Thieneman at Oregon test. I think he's a really good football player. I want to see how he tests. And then Emmanuel McNeil-Warren out of Toledo, right? Another guy at the end of that first round or maybe in the day two, however, people have him ranked differently. How he tests, a guy coming from a small school.
I mean, and if you followed me, I had been reporting since the Shrine Bowl. I was told that, he's not fast, which is one of the reasons why he didn't show up at the Senior Bowl. So, again, if he runs well, good for him. If he doesn't run well, it's kind of a red flag. With safeties, the 3-cone and the shuttle are just as important because remember, safeties have to go sideline to sideline. So while straight line speed, like you said, is not a big deal, you want to see that speed going sideline to sideline. You want to see during the drills that safeties can do cornerback drills, flip their hips, track the pass in the air, because all of a sudden, compared to the college game, like Emmanuel McNeil-Warren, it's not straight line downhill. It's also laterally. Bud Clark, who had a terrific Senior Bowl, not known as a great tester. Can he prove people wrong? Does Genesis Smith of Arizona, does he do any testing? How fast is he? I think he's an outstanding safety. Cole Wisniewski, unfortunately, was not invited to the combine. I think he should have. Guys later on like Dalton Johnson of Arizona, Jacoby Thomas of Miami of Florida. These guys are known as basically straight line, downhill, guys in the mid 4.5s. Can they run faster? Can they run good shuttle times and good 3-cone times? Because that will bode well for them as part of the process.
All right, Doty, final thoughts here before we get on planes early next week and we have some fun in Indy and have some steak.
Oh, the final thoughts are, I really don't like putting a lot of emphasis in the combine. It's just one piece of the puzzle. But with so many questions, with so few true first rounders, I mean, the testing numbers can mean a lot this year because when you have guys that you just don't know, late in the draft, teams will look for size speed guys. When you don't know what to do, you'll go with the guy that's bigger, faster, stronger, that's athletic because you're going to coach him into being a football player, or they believe they can coach him into being a football player. I think that's going to be pushed up a little bit more because there's so much questions and I hate to say it, a mediocre draft, if you will, as far as top end talent, where these combine numbers could mean a lot come draft day when teams are deciding on what player they're going to select.
Tony, good stuff, my friend. Always a pleasure. We'll see you in Indianapolis.
Look forward to it, John.
That's draft season. You can find all of Tony's stuff and combine previews and all that stuff on Essentially Sports. Thanks for joining us on the Draft Season podcast brought to you by Moody's, a proud sponsor of the New York Giants. Coming to you from the Hackensack Marine Health Podcast Studio. Keep getting better. For Tony Pauline, I'm John Schmelk. We will see you next time, everybody.